Hi, Jonathan Broadbent here, founder and creator of UnWoke.Academy with another quick market minute. This one on bookstore Barnes & Noble. I happened to catch a post on social media platform Facebook about Barnes & Noble. This one came from Conservative Twins. I'll read the following and then we'll get into how this relates to UnWoke.Academy. The post says simply, "Parents sound off. A dad went viral finding the gay ABCs and Pride 123 sitting in the toddler section at his local Barnes & Noble. He opens the book and reads the first page out loud. B is for bi. You can shout this out loud. I like more than one gender, and that makes me proud." Then he looks straight into the camera and says what a lot of parents are thinking. How did we get here? These are toddler books. Not our kids, man. Not our kids. The clip's lighting up on X, sparking a bigger question. Why is a bookstore pushing identity politics on 2-year-olds instead of, ABC and 123? Barnes & Noble might want to remember, parents are paying attention now. So I did a quick look up on Barnes & Noble and found some interesting things. The first is that Barnes & Noble was publicly traded, which might have pointed us to the usual suspects like Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street, and others pushing them in a far left direction, which relates, of course, directly to UnWoke.Academy. But I found that Barnes & Noble actually delisted. They used to be on the New York Stock Exchange as BKS, but delisted, taking themselves private. Well, you might think at that point, well, if they're a private company, then they're free to make that choice, and they can make that choice independently on whether or not to pump kiddie porn and gender confusion into 2-year-olds. But it turns out there's a little bit of a deeper story. Barnes & Noble, the bookstore itself, has delisted and is no longer publicly traded. However, they have Barnes & Noble Education. So using Brave Search, I wanted to know more about this because if you've followed UnWoke.Academy for any length of time and maybe know a little bit about my background in advocating for proper education in K through 12, I happen to know a lot about book publishers and many of the pressures that they're under and the lucrative nature of pumping all sorts of propaganda and bad stuff into K through 12 education. That led me to the following description from Brave Search. Barnes & Noble Education Incorporated, which is publicly traded, does not primarily function as a traditional book publisher. Instead, it is an educational services company that sells, distributes, and provides access to a wide range of educational materials. These educational materials are textbooks, course materials via access programs like First Day and First Day Complete, and all sorts of other stuff that is being pumped into K through 12 education. So what this leads us to is the very strong suspicion that Barnes & Noble Education has to jump through all sorts of hoops in order to continue to gain access to publishing information, books, coursework, material, etc., into what I call the education industrial complex. So assuming that's the case, let's take a look at the largest institutional owners of BNED, that's Barnes & Noble Education. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen, once again, according to Morningstar.com, this is all publicly available information. You can go to Morningstar.com and see exactly this. Got many of the usual suspects there. iShares, which is part of BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, State Street, the usual suspects. These are the main institutional owners, and that may well mean your 401k, IRA, or other type of account invested in these funds, giving money to these institutions with which they can purchase majority shares of companies like BNED and pressure them in directions that forces them to go woke. My suggestion, know what you own. Get your money out of funding the woke left. This has been another Market Minute from UnWoke.Academy.